When constructing this layout with CSS Grid, applying display grid to a parent container only affect its direct child element, transforming them into a grid item that can be arranged with the specified grid structure. However, the child element of this grid item remain unaffected by the grid and follow the normal document flow, which complicate the alignment of inner element across different grid items. To address this, you can convert each of these child element into grid themselves by setting their display property to grid. This creates what is known as nested grid. These nested grid operate independently from one another, each having its own set of rows and columns. As a result, maintaining consistent alignment across elements with this nested grid remain challenging. In September 2023, a significant advancement in CSS arrived with official support for subgrid feature level 2 of CSS Grid across all major browsers. This feature enables grid items that contain their own grid to adapt the row and column definition of their parent grid. The impact of this is substantial. Previously, our design suffered from misalignment issues because each item possessed its own independent set of rows and columns. By enabling subgrid on these items, they no longer maintain separate grid definition. Instead, they inherit the row and column of the parent grid. As a result, each item aligns perfectly, creating a cohesive and orderly layout, which can be seen here. We have different size of text, but the alignment is perfect with images and text because each subgrid takes its own row and column. Even if you have a different size of images, not a big issue. Now let's jump into coding part in order to apply this. Now in the body, let's start by header for our page. Name it CSS Subgrid. Let's make a class as a container. We name it outer grid, and inside here we need a class. Name it card, and in the class card I want header h2, class name header. Name it CSS Subgrid as well. And now let's add a paragraph, and the paragraph I want to make a class as well. The tag is p and class name it content, and in here I want to add like 15 word of lorem ipsum, and then make a class for image container. Name it image container, and in here add image tag, and let's add the image. And I have an image name browser here. Let's add it right here and here as. Now we need to add 3 of these, but with the different size of text. So let's here add the same class and different size of text. Let's add lorem ipsum 25 word and save it. And for the last one, let's add the same but some more text. Now for the third text, let's add lorem ipsum 35 word and let's save it. Now I have a header. Each item has a 3 header, text and image. So now let's go to CSS. I already linked my CSS, and let's go to CSS in order to apply our subgrid. Now in CSS I have import Google font. I will put this link on the description below, and I resize default padding and margin and box sizing. So now let's go to body and start styling. In the body, let's add font family. For the font family, I want Arial and sans serif, and make a font size 1.2 rem. Get padding to add some space, 10 pixel. Now for h1, this is the heading of the whole page, and the heading I want font family to be different, and for that I have a no cipher. This is the reason why we imported Google font. Cursive, text align to be center. I want font size to be 3 rem. I want color to be red. Add text shadow, 2 pixel, 2 pixel, 4 pixel, and to be with black. Now let's go to our outer grid, which is container. Its class, we call it outer grid. First, display grid. When we display grid, you see the text and images are on top of each other. Now let's apply grid template columns. And for grid template columns, I have 3 sections. So I say repeat, and for this I want 3 columns, each to have 1 fraction. And when I save it, you see, our item automatically displayed inside our grid. To see this, we can open developer tool. Now if you just open your developer tool and click on grid, here you see the alignment of each section in the grid. Now let's give a gap 20 pixel and add grid template rows. Let's give it to auto. We have a class card which is direct child for outer grid. For this, I want to add padding 10 pixel and make a box shadow instead of border. For box shadows, I want to add 2 pixel horizontal offset, 4 pixel vertical offset, 8 pixel blur radius, RGB color to be 0, 0, 0, alpha to be 0.6, add border radius to be 10 pixel. As we see the layout here, they are not well aligned as the size of the content are not equal, and there's a space below image where the text are small. And we can see this when we open our developer tool. This happened because we add display grid to outer grid. In this case, only direct children become grid item, and the child of the item, in our case card, are not part of a grid. That's why they display normal flow, which make difficult for element inside each card to line up with each other. This is what we face when we use grid. We can find our way out to solve this problem using different methods. We can use nesting, but still the problem is not solved. Recently we get a new feature which is CSS Subgrid. We can solve this problem easily by using Subgrid. Let's go to the card, which is our target class, and apply Subgrid to see what will happen. Now, in order to use Subgrid, we need to define the grid here because the card are direct children of outer grid, our container. First, we need to define a grid for our item, display grid. Now, as we apply a grid on the card, if we open our developer tool, now let's click on the right grid button. Currently, each card is placed in its own individual grid, making them independent of each other. However, we want them to be part of a parent grid. To achieve this, we can use a subgrid property. Subgrid can be applied to the grid template rows and columns. Grid template rows, subgrid. Now, this happened because using the subgrid property, we need to define the track rows each card will occupy within the parent grid. To fix this, we already add, grid template rows to display auto. In the card, we need to include the grid row property and configure it to span from 1 to 4 and save it. As we define our grid rows and grid template rows, let's align the same space. Let's open a developer tool in order to see the boxes. If you click on the subgrid, this resolves our alignment issue regardless of our content size. As a subgrid property, ensure the card inherit the rows and columns from the parent grid. This achieves our desired layout, making the card align correctly within our overall grid structure. As we defined here the grid rows, even if we removed the grid template rows, there will be any problem because browser already defined automatically. So let's save it here, and if you see, alignment is perfect. In order to make this responsive without using media query, we can simply come to grid template columns on the outer grid, which is parent container. Instead of 3 by 1 fraction, now replace 3 with auto fit function and 1 fraction with min max, and define the size here. I'm going to choose 300 pixel as minimum and 1 fraction as maximum. Now for the item here, for the grid rows, instead of 1 by 4, we replace it with a span 3 because we have 3 columns. As you see here, this is responsive without even using media query, only CSS grid and subgrid. That's all for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you like this tutorial, please give it a thumb up and subscribe to my channel in order to see more content like this. Until next, happy coding.